Please now welcome to the stage our third speaker for the evening, Miss Jess Eblin and her thesis, New Paradigm Ahead, an argument for the inclusion of special education within the Christian college.
From the time we are old enough to understand what imagination is, we are encouraged to dream up the best possible future for ourselves. Whether it be a career as an astronaut, policeman, president, or princess, we are told there is no limit to the things we can accomplish so long as we work hard enough to achieve them. But for too many, these aspirations are overshadowed by an abnormality in brain function or genetic makeup. Their intrinsic talents and gifts are ignored simply because the prospect of educating a student with special needs seems too daunting for today's educational system. And yet, in Numbers 13 and 14, we are reminded of Joshua and Caleb's unwavering faith in God to help them defeat the giants in their path. While the Israelites cowered in fear, these two men chose to trust in the provisions of the Lord and urged their countrymen to enter into the Promised Land. It was their example that encouraged Trinity Classical Academy to bring about a new Promised Land of purposeful education for all students, regardless of disability. Trinity's Imago Day School has made great strides in providing a purposeful Christian education to students with special needs. But as their first senior class is about to graduate, the likelihood of their collegiate education is brought into question. Why is it considered normal to deny these hardworking students access into the natural progression of their education? In order to solve this problem, we must first understand how we have progressed to this point. Robert Osgood, a recognized historian and advocate for children with disabilities, recounts that for much of American history, people with disabilities were shunned from the public eye, housed in county poorhouses or asylums. It wasn't until the 1950s that significant changes in legislation and treatment began to occur. In 1954, the Brown versus Board of Education court ruling decided that separate but equal education for Black and white students was unconstitutional. It was this ruling that led the way in understanding and implementing the right to a public education for all students, regardless of race, gender, or disability. By the 1970s, almost all asylums in the US had been abolished. And on July 28, 1975, the US Congress passed the Education for All Handicapped Children Act, which made it illegal to deny education to anyone solely on the basis of a disability. As reforms progressed into the early 2000s, independent organizations and foundations took an increasingly more active role in defending the federal and educational rights of people with disabilities. Legislation such as the No Child Left Behind Act held schools accountable for the quality of education they provided by enforcing the participation of students with special needs on statewide assessments. As special education progressed throughout American history, colleges in America underwent their own transformation. For much of American history, the university was reserved for elite members of society, namely those entering into government or clergy positions. This perception of the college education persisted until the end of World War II, when in 1944, the Servicemen's Readjustment Act covered college tuition and residential fees for returning veterans to help them re-engage in civilian life. Today, it is all but mandated for students to attend some form of college after completing their secondary education, and yet most colleges do not provide any programs for students with special needs within their campuses. Christian colleges have an obligation, by virtue of what they are, to provide inclusive programs for students with significant cognitive disabilities and challenges who completed a special needs curriculum in high school. Colleges must be utilized to produce virtuous men and women, so their character must be actively refined throughout their college career in order to serve effectively upon graduation. These inclusive programs are already in existence in a select few secular institutions and can serve as an example for the transition into the Christian collegiate realm. As an extension of the church, Christian colleges must recognize the significance of the task they are necessarily charged to further God's kingdom on earth. The mission statements they have crafted serve to guide the institution in regards to their success in this calling. The University of Notre Dame, for example, claims to cultivate in its students not only an appreciation for the great achievements of human beings, but also a disciplined sensitivity to the poverty, injustice, and oppression that burden the lives of so many. In order to claim this virtue of service, they must then be actively preparing their students to become leaders by engaging within the community throughout their college career. This theory of active engagement in order to form a virtue has been widely accepted and taught throughout history. According to Aristotle's virtue ethics, a virtue may originate within a person, but it must be continually acted upon and practiced in order to form a habit. In doing so, the action becomes easier over time until it becomes second nature to the possessor and ultimately a part of his character. Manuel Velasquez, a professor at Santa Clara University, further claims, a person's character traits are not developed in isolation, but by and within the community to which he or she is a part of, including church, family, school, and other private and public associations. In this way, one's character and virtues are necessarily formed by the ideals to which he or she is introduced to from their community and other surroundings. One parent of a student with special needs who was interviewed for Osgood's work further claims that it is better for our kids with and without disabilities to grow up and learn alongside one another, so that these kids, when they are community leaders, will accept people who are different and give them the opportunities to succeed that everyone else deserves. If students with special needs are integrated throughout our educational system, we can bridge the gap between these two demographics, advocating for and more effectively serving an integral part of our community. Although many would agree special needs inclusion is ideal in theory, resistance remains due to the uncertainty of its success. However, special needs education programs have already been implemented in a select few secular institutions and can serve as an example for the transition into the Christian collegiate realm. The University of Arizona recently opened its Strategic Alternative Learning Techniques Center, which provides students with special needs access to tutoring, individualized planning, social activities, and other psychological services to help them thrive within the classroom setting. If our secular counterparts have already begun finding ways to give students with special needs access to functional preparation, we must be actively planning similar options to allow these students the opportunity to engage within the beauty and purpose of a Christian education and community. A common objection to an inclusive model is that it is neither necessary nor useful to the demographic of students with disabilities to partake in a Christian college. That due to the level of their IQ, the variety of available jobs is extremely limited and restricted, therefore necessitating functional preparation instead of a liberal arts education. While it is true the experiences a student with special needs will encounter will be different from those of a neurotypical student, we cannot mitigate the effect intellectually challenging work has on a person. Temple Grandin, a woman with autism who is currently a professor at Colorado University, argues that one's disability should not and cannot define someone's life. Too many times we focus on the reasons something cannot be done instead of looking to one's redeeming qualities and working to help them cultivate their existing talents. Just as we continue to encourage neurotypical students struggling in various subjects, we must apply this same principle to the special needs community, allowing them to develop their natural talents into employable qualities. Due to the recent trends in the availability of a college education, it has become a necessity for prospective employees to have completed some form of college and received a degree in their individual field. This has left an astounding 83% of adults with autism in the US unemployed. How have we allowed this to persist for so long? Our educational systems must become aware that intellectually satisfying work makes life meaningful to all people regardless of disability. Today, we stand at the precipice of entering a new promised land. We have the opportunity to follow the example of Joshua and Caleb and lead Christian education, as well as the community at large, into a new era of truly diverse inclusion and demonstrate what it means to exhibit real love. By actively cultivating the virtues of our students throughout their college career and looking to the example of existing inclusive programs, we can continue to bring forth God's kingdom. Instead of repeating Israel's history, we must have the courage to face the giants of making inclusive education a paradigm within the Christian collegiate realm, and in doing so, reap unimaginable blessings through Christ. Thank you.